Today's going to be our third day of graphing, and we're going to look at horizontal and vertical shifts of the sine and cosine curve. So where yesterday we just looked at amplitude and period, today we're going to add horizontal and vertical shifts. So the equations we're going to look at today are y equals a, which we talked about yesterday, the sine bx plus c plus d, and then we're going to look at the cosine as well. Y equals a, the cosine bx plus c plus d. So we're adding a few more letters. So from yesterday again, a equals the amplitude. To find, oops, that's spelled wrong. You guys can figure that out. To calculate the period, it was 2 pi divided by b. And then we said those critical points, those 4 points needed to make a complete wave. We take, to scale those, we take our period times 1/4, or divided by 4. But now we have these C and D letters. Like the plus D is probably the easiest. We've added that to other graphs, such as if we'd had like x squared plus 2, it just shifts it up 2. So the D does the same thing. D is our vertical shift. And then the horizontal shift is sometimes called the phase shift as well. So you will see it as phase shift, but we've always called it our horizontal shift in the past. And we'd say that that's the C, but with the B here, we have to do C over B. So it's a little different. In x squared, we had if we had x minus 2 squared, we'd say that moved to the right 2, but we're dealing with that number out in front, so it's that C over B. So we're going to take a look at a couple of these here. So the first one that we're going to take a look at graphing is y equals -2 the sine of 2x minus pi. So the first thing I would do is let's identify all our letters. So A is 2, B is 2, C is pi, and D there isn't one. All right, so our amplitude is 2, so we have that already. So our period would be 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. So those critical points, we take our period times 1/4, so it's at pi over 4. The phase shift, so we have to look for our direction right here, so it's minus. So that's going to go to the right, C over B. I'm going to write this down, it's getting a little tight right here. Oops. So it's going to go to the right, pi over 2. Then it's not going to move up or down at all. So let's graph this over here. So we're going to start the same way we did yesterday, putting our 4 marks on each side. So this is our x-axis, so that's 0. So it's going to go, our amplitude is 2. And we're counting by pi over 4. So 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, which is pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and then pi. And so let's see, if we didn't have a phase shift, this is sine, so it would start in the center. But since we have a phase shift here, we said it goes to the right pi over 2. Now pi over 2 is represented by 2 scale marks. So I'm going to move my start to the right pi over 2. And that's my new starting point, we could say. So let's see, it's a sine, so that's where we're going to, our new start, but it's negative. So instead of going up, it's going to go down, middle, high. So that point will be used again. And we have our graph there. So the second one we're going to take a look at. Let's take a look at y equals 3, the cosine 1/2 x minus pi over 2 plus 1. So first identify the letters. A equals 3, B equals 1/2, C equals pi over 2, and our D we have is 1. So our amplitude is 2. So our period, 2 pi divided by 1/2, which is really 2 pi times 2 over 1. So that's 4 pi. So that means our critical points, 4 pi times 1/4, 4 pi over 4, so that's just pi. The shift, so let's see, we have minus, so that's going to move it to the right. C over B, so pi over 2 divided by 1/2. So that's pi over 2 times 2 over 1. So that's just to the right pi. And then it's going to move up 1. So our graph of this one here, let's see, 4 marks on each side. So up 1. So what I'm going to do is, this is our new midline. So I'm going to dash in that. So our midline is 1. Our amplitude is 3. So from this line, I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's 4. And then down 3, 1, 2, 3. So that's at -2. Because again, the amplitude is how far from the midline. Our midline has always just been at 0. So let's see, what are our critical points? We're counting by, so 1 pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, 4 pi. It's cosine. So cosine normally starts high at 1, because again, I always think that unit circle, 1, 0. 1 is our cosine, so it normally starts at 1, but our amplitude's 3, so it's going to start up here. But let's see, we've shifted it, and where have we shifted it? To the right pi. So we got to go to the right pi, so there's our start right there. So then it would go medium, low, medium, low, medium, high, medium. So we have our graph. And we'll take a look at one more together here. So the third one we're going to take a look at. Y equals 2 the sine So you'll notice this one's factored a little bit differently. We have the 2 on the outside. So we can distribute that. So we have 2 the sine 2x plus 2 pi over 2. So that would just be pi plus 5. So now we can identify our letters. A equals 2, B equals 2, C would be pi, and D would be 5. So our amplitude is 2. Our period is 2 pi over 2, which is pi. So our critical points, 1/4 that, would be every pi over 4. C over B, so let's see, it's a plus. So that's going to move it to the left, pi over 2. And then it's going to move up 5. So our graph here. Our midline, it moved up 5, and I don't want to count up that far, so I'm just going to put a little mark here. And I'm going to say that that's 5. Our amplitude is 2, so maybe I'll just put one. Again, it's all about the labeling here, so it might not quite be to scale. So that's going to be at 2. Nope, sorry, up 2, so that's going to be at 7. Then we're going to go down, so down 2. So that's going to be at 3. Then we have our critical points, 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, so pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, which is pi. Now where does sine usually start? Sine, if I go back to the circle, 1, 0. Sine is the y value, so sine starts at 0. Sine starts at the center line because it's usually at 0, but it's shifted up, so it'll start at 5. But we have to move this one to the left pi over 2. I should put some tick marks in here. So you'll see pi over 2 is 2 tick marks. So I'm going to take this 2 scale marks, shift it to the left pi over 2. So sine will be there, start there, and it's positive. So then it's going to go high, middle, low, middle, high, middle. And we have our graph.